Welcome inside another edition of Mountaineer Report here on WV Sports Now. Mike Asti, Ethan Bock. Watch us on YouTube and also find us everywhere you get your podcasts. And on this edition of the show, we are going to talk some basketball. So everyone's been talking football. We've talked some football as well. But on this episode, we are going to talk some basketball and highlight the women's program in addition to the men. Women's program now entering the season ranked. So a West Virginia team enters the season ranked. They're getting some national love, coming in at number 16 in the preseason AP top 25. And the men's team looking at a whole different era now with Darian DeVries as head coach, but not really getting some national love on the Ken Palm ranking, kind of off the board everywhere else. Nationally kind of expecting the same season as a year ago, and we've already said it got to be better than that, or there's going to be problems, even though it is year one with a new regime. So we have to, and this is their just due. The women's program is going to be the headline here, to say the very least. They get the number 16 spot, Ethan. We talked about in a past show, maybe they're actually getting slighted. We kind of were wondering if they were going to get AP love because they were only getting that 5 spot in the Big 12 preseason media poll. And that seemed kind of a bit of a slap after they got in the NCAA tournament. They won a tournament game. They only lost to Caitlin Clark in Iowa in a game they were very competitive in. People even thought was controversial. They would play anybody else, they probably in the Sweet 16 in year one of Mark Kellogg. Generally, these polls are off of what happened a year ago and the roster, and they bring back pretty much the same roster with some tweaks, and the best player in J.J. Quinterly is back as well, and they got the number 5 spot. But it turns out that might not have been as much of a slight because they end up at number 16 in the AP, but they are one of 4 Big 12 teams that are ranked, and they have the lowest rank behind the other ones. Not 5, but 4. So what do you feel? How do you feel about number 16 for the women's program? Is it fair, foul? Does it sound about right for you?
Definitely fair. I mean, this is what happens in most preseason polls, no matter what sport. If you're bringing back a collection of athletes from a previous team and you had some postseason hype, and West Virginia didn't even make a Cinderella run. They just really played well against the Caitlin Clark-led Iowa team, who ended up playing in the national title game. And West Virginia had an opportunity to beat that team as a eight seed. So for West Virginia to have that opportunity to crack that top 25 is definitely fair. And I'm honestly surprised they got all the way up to 16. I was expecting that 18 to 22 range, but I also thought there was a chance that they just don't get in because the preseason polls are just such an unknown.
I thought there was a chance they don't get in, especially after the Big 12 preseason media poll. And yeah, I thought kind of what happened last year when they got ranked. Anywhere from 18 to 22, that 22 number they got repeatedly. Maybe even 24 at the worst. That's kind of what I thought. I actually think 16, if you're Mark Kellogg and that staff, you got to be elated. Because that means that those voters, even if not the Big 12 media poll, and the Big 12 media poll does not really mean a damn thing. It really doesn't. In terms of analytic ranks, AP ranks, national ranks, no one's claiming any titles from a Big 12 media poll. Doesn't matter. And it's usually wrong. That tells me that nationally the view is pretty positive. I mean, they're 16. That tells me you're going to get some hot takes here, Ethan, that someone's going to say they're a dark horse Sweet 16 team. You're going to get some of those people who cover college basketball nationally that are going to drop, those comments on ESPN and Fox. Watch out for the Mountaineers. If they were 25, probably not. If they weren't ranked, probably not. It's a wait and see. But 16 tells me that people like that team.
Yeah, 100%. If you look at this team, they bring back the majority of the rotation players from last year. They add girls from the transfer portal who are kind of plug and play. It's the new formula, especially in basketball. Yeah. Football is way harder to do this in, but plug and play. Just retain your underclassmen, your upperclassmen, and then any holes that you need to fill from a grad or a transfer entry, do it in the portal. And then this women's program is still able to go and get high school seniors and then just be able to develop them. And that's the formula to win. So I definitely can see national media in women's basketball hyping up this team. And even though they're fourth in the AP poll in the Big 12,
right.
it's crazy how TCU was like right in front of West Virginia in that Big 12 poll, and they're not even ranked. So
they got some votes, but yeah, they're not ranked. Yeah,
they should, like West Virginia. Then it's like they should, their preseason expectations are to be a top 4 Big 12 team, and there's and now Mark Kellogg's going to have to answer those expectations this year.
Yeah, when he took the job, even though they were a tournament team a year earlier in only one season of Don P, there was a lot of drama. He had to kind of re-recruit even the best player on JJ Quinterly, and nobody knew what to expect. He had success at a mid-major level, didn't really win in the tournament. Nobody knew what to expect. And I think the fans would have probably given him a mulligan. You're coming off drama. It's a new coach. Wait and see a little bit. We even talked about that with the men's team and Darian DeVries. Obviously, the fans want better than a year ago. You want to see it taking a step, but no one's going to be mad if you don't go to a Final Four in year 1 of a program. Most reasonable people know there's time that needed to build and get your system in there. But Mark Kellogg right away had some of the greatest success the program's ever achieved. Literally the greatest first-year run for the women's basketball program ever, and trumps the year before. So the expectations are now that if you miss the NCAA tournament, Ethan, after you get in, win a game, and lose to Caitlin Clark, if the next year with the same roster in all intents and purposes, and you miss the tournament, that then is going to be viewed as a failure and a step back, and people are going to wonder if it was just kind of an aberration of last year with Mark Kellogg. That might not be fair. He's had a great career as a coach, but the West Virginia fan needs to see this step again this year. So we talked a lot of expectations for the men's team, and it's really hard to gauge that right now. We haven't even seen them play together, still looking at exhibition games, etc. What is fair to expect out of the women's program? And for you, what would constitute a step in the right direction, or at least continuing the success? And what would be a step backwards that would give you concern if they're going to continuously build this for a decade, or if that was kind of a flash in the pan year last year?
Yeah, year 2 under Mark Kellogg, the expectations should be higher than last year. I think going into last year, there were 0 expectations, kind of similar to what the men's program is dealing with now. I think realistic expectations for West Virginia fans to be happy would be top 25 pretty much majority of the year, if not the entire year, and then getting like that 4 to 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, competing for a Big 12 title, maybe not winning the conference tournament, but at least in that Final Four, or you're in that conference title game, and then making the second weekend. This program has had a drought of a Sweet 16 appearance. So if Mark Kellogg in his second year is able to get them with a 4 or 5 seed, give or take, maybe you're a 3 or a 6. If you're able to get a Sweet 16 appearance in year 2, that's a great year. If their seed line's worse than last year, if they're looking at a 10, maybe an at-large 11 or 12, then, or if this, like you said, if they miss the tournament, yeah, I think it's a down year. The expectation,
seed line matters though in the tournament. It really, really does.
Yeah,
I mean, you could argue, and they did argue, and this is part of how they got in some drama with a college media member, that they thought their seed line was disrespectful. They thought they should have had a better seed line last year, but they did have a couple upsets. They did not really beat a big boy. Like, they didn't really have a major statement win, even when they were winning. Prior to January, they were really beating up on lower competition, even when they got ranked. And clearly the committee said that's the case, that you didn't have a statement win. You did kind of a Neil Brown thing in 2023. Like, you won a lot of games, but there was no statement win there. So you're getting in, but you're going to clearly lose right away. And they thought they were disrespected by that. So as you're saying, you need to make sure you don't get tripped up, you don't get upset, you do beat the team that maybe one or two times you get a win against a team that's favored to beat you, and that gets you a top 4 seed line, a 4 or 5 spot, and then you can avoid the number 1 seed in that first weekend. That's the critical thing. We all knew once you saw the bracket, okay, this is a good Mountaineer team. They're not beating Caitlin Clark. Like, it's not happening. It's not gonna happen.
But the fact that they were able to compete for the entire game, right? Honestly, they should have been able to steal the game.
Yeah,
I mean, they were being talked about nationally because everybody was watching Caitlin Clark. She was the most marketable college basketball player, men's or women's, last year. So for West Virginia, they proved the committee wrong with just that game alone.
They did,
even though they lost.
Yeah, and there were even people nationally that said that, and they even said people that are not Iowa or West Virginia people at all that said that accused the referees and said they got hosed in the game. And I mean, people forget there was a whole conspiracy that people thought that they were just trying to conspire to get Caitlin Clark further in the tournament again. And obviously she was a great player. That was a better team. I think there were some rough calls in that game, but you knew that was going to be the case. That's how the women's game is especially set up when you're going on. These are road games at that point. So they knew they were not going to get home cooking calls. It was going to be really, really rough. They're going to have to be 10 points better, not just equal, in order to get that win. And it didn't happen. They didn't win, but they lost in a way that if moral victories count in sports, and they really don't, that was a moral win. They almost were able to hang a banner like
victories.
Yeah.
That's one of the best moral victories I think you can have. I mean, right there.
Yeah, put a banner up. Competed really well with Caitlin Clark in Iowa. Like, that's almost – I mean, we saw Mark Kellogg soon after that. He was feeling himself. Like, it was like they won. Like, he had a swag to his step. Like, yeah, we made Iowa sweat. We're taking it. It's a dub.
I think he – I don't know how you couldn't be in that situation. Year one, you're going to bring back most of your girls from the past team. I think he was prepared to have this expectation of being a top 15, 20 preseason team, with potentially the expectations of winning the Big 12.
And I certainly think he has those expectations now. I mean, obviously there's still other ranked teams in the Big 12 in front of them. TCU could argue. TCU probably can do a show on being slighted themselves, because that's insane. So it won't be easy. Will not be easy. But he's also, we talk a lot about eligibility and how much you have certain players. He's lucky to have Quinterly again. I mean, he didn't get her on her last year when he had that special season. He gets another year of her. So now she should be even better, and his system's more in place. That entire first half of the season, he talked about in those pressers. Quinterly and him had to get to know each other. They had to learn the system, the players. They didn't know the system. What she played under Don P was totally different. What they had in the system prior to Mike Carey was totally different. Some of those players had to learn a new system twice in 2 years. And that's very annoying, obviously. And they didn't leave, which you give them kudos for that. If this was the men's game, I think we both know they would have been out of there. So that doesn't have to go on now. Everyone's on board. Everyone's bought in. Everyone knows. There's higher expectations. There's more pressure, but that it should be an easier coaching job at the beginning of the season, I would think, for Mark Kellogg and his staff, who also know each other. They know the campus. They know where to go. Ren knows them. All of that. It was like an evaluation year last year that ended up being arguably the best season in program history. That now you have expectations, though, to do even more. Mountaineer Report here, Ethan Bock, Mike Asti, WV Sports. Now we will have coverage of the women's season for sure, but obviously also covering the men's program, and they have exhibition games coming up. Season's still a little bit away, but nearing closer. Hard to expect, hard to know what to expect. Ethan, what was it, 87 Ken Palm?
Yep.
We knew they weren't going to get ranked or even get votes. Nobody knows what to expect out of this team. You could argue last year under interim Josh Eilert was literally the worst season in program history. There's history there, but not right now. And this program's trying to rebuild in a whole new era with Darian DeVries. Size could be an issue for this team for sure. Do you think the 87's fair or foul, though? Because that appeared to even be worse than I thought it would be.
I think it's fair. Crazy enough. I mean, I don't think anybody in the entire country, even inside the practice facility building, really know how good or bad this team is going to be. Yeah. You have a whole new entire coaching staff. Pretty much every single piece of Bob Huggins' staff is gone. You don't have a Bob Huggins player in there. You have a Josh Eilert player, Nofri Neve, and that's your only returnee. You have an entire new team with guys who came from everywhere, any level of college basketball, Power 5, mid-major, low-major, the guys that were on winning teams but didn't play. And then you also have guys who were really good on really bad teams. So there should not be a single person in the country that knows how this team is exactly going to do this year.
Yeah, Darian DeVries might not even know.
He might not even, let alone a computer. So
yeah, that's true.
West Virginia being out of those KenPom rankings, being 15th out of the 16 Big 12 teams. Yeah, I think
that's a little. That might even be more of a slight than. But yeah,
I think West Virginia's got enough pieces at the top between Tucker DeVries and Javon Small to where I would be shocked if they finish 15. Do I think they finish top 10 in the conference? No, but I would be shocked if they're like right at the very bottom of the Big 12. I think there's a few games in their Big 12 schedule that they can steal at home if you're just going game by game predictions.
Yeah.
And I think Darian DeVries he's a top half coach in this league, which is saying something because it's the Big 12. You have Kelvin Sampson, Bill Self.
Right.
Now you have Tommy Lloyd, TJ Otzelberger. There's really good coaches in this league, even all going down to Jamie Dixon. So
Jamie Dixon's resume is borderline Hall of Fame if he gets another run going. Yeah.
So for Darian DeVries, I just cannot see, even for how much talent I don't think this team has. I would be shocked if they're finishing 15th with a pretty good, actually very good X's and O's coach.
Yeah, and this is maybe the greatest challenge Darian DeVries will have. And yeah, building up Drake probably was that, but you have a major program with history, with a rabid fan base that's kind of sick of dealing with crap, and a roster that's certainly going to be a little weaker than a lot of the teams in your conference, but you have a great player. He's your son. You brought him there because obviously he's your son. He's only there because you're there. You're a great X's and O's coach, but will your system work in the Big 12? A lot of people ask that. Will it actually work and translate into the Big 12? And if you get to that team into anywhere near the top half of the conference, I think you're proving a lot of yourself. So in this situation, when maybe your talent's not where you want it to be in the conference, in a very, very tough conference that can argue as the toughest conference in the country, yet again, you want to have a coach to balance it out. So they do have an X's and O's coach in Darian DeVries. They do have a young mind in Darian DeVries. They do have a great coach in Darian DeVries. The other programs wanted to. That maybe should buy him a win or two to dig him out of the basement. You would figure. But you don't know, and again, maybe we're giving them too much credit. We have not seen it, and we could be taught. I almost guarantee that the one decision Ren Baker is not having to make a year from now, even if they win only 9, he is not firing Darian DeVries. He's going to give this time and going to give this years. That was agreed upon. That was said. Darian DeVries would have to leave on his own for him not to be the coach the next season. So he does have that cushion, but the fans obviously want to take a step. We'll see what he does, but the expectations do need to be tempered to be reasonable. And you're not winning the Big 12. You're not probably getting in the NCAA tournament. That's just not happening. Yeah. We got to see what they do, though, in terms of actual quality play. You don't want to finish 87 in KenPom, but if they move from 87 to the top 40 in KenPom to 50, because they're going to have a benefit of KenPom that if they get any of those upset wins or even compete and lose in this Big 12 schedule with those quality opponents, they will move up in KenPom. If you remember, you don't got to move. You can lose and move up in KenPom.
We've seen many teams as of late at West Virginia get 16, 18 wins, but they could be top 40 in KenPom, which is crazy.
Because of the Big 12, that's the one Big 12 benefit of the conference being so tough. But
it sucks. It sucks for Darian DeVries, and we've talked about this before. It sucks for him that the last year and a half of this program has just been pretty much miserable. Very toxic, very miserable. It's not even like the right word to use, I guess. But just between the end of the Huggins era, Josh Eiler's put in a terrible spot. They win 9 games. Now Darian DeVries has to literally rebuild the entire program, and the fans don't really want to wait 2 to 3 years. That's the thing. So it sucks, but the end of the Huggins era and transitioning from Eiler to DeVries, that's put Darian DeVries in a spot where he needs to prove something year one. And if it's not winning on the court, it just at least has to be retaining players and just identifying a culture and identifying a play style so people can actually know what they're getting themselves into, and they can actually, a casual average West Virginia basketball fan can put a face to a name rather than running through 10 different seniors every single year from the portal.
Yeah, and at the very least, even because he only has this one more year of eligibility left, showing that you as a coach in the Big 12 can elevate the man you've been coaching since birth, your son, and then allow the fans to have, when they see the NBA draft and all that conversation, West Virginia's logo up there and a player who gets drafted, or a player that has a legit chance. I'm not talking about summer league where you're barely playing and then you have no chance. If he can, because people said that he would never have been at Drake if it wasn't for his dad and he was always an NBA player. Mark Kellogg, Charles Barkley, a Hall of Famer, have all said he's an NBA guy. If he doesn't get there, that's going to look really bad if you're a 9-win team and now this man is looking at summer league at best. He doesn't put up points. He's digressing. You're his dad. Like, you probably regret him coming. You, at minimum, you got to elevate from the win total a year ago. You got to make it more entertaining to play, and Tucker got to have a quality year that improves his value.
100%.
Because if he doesn't, even though he only has one more year, other players who are on the fringe too, they may think again about coming. If he can get Tucker into the second round of the NBA draft, that can sell future recruits. And he's probably fringe right now, I would think. Certainly if he gets him first round or better. But we'll see. That's going to be the title of all the men's shows. We'll see. I don't know right now, basically. They have not played, and exhibitions don't even count. I'm not analyzing them. So we will see when the games matter. They can't lose bye games. They win some bye games, they're already in the double digits probably. They cannot lose a bye game like happened last year. That'll do it for this edition of Mountaineer Report. Here we talk some basketball. We talk positivity for the women's team and unknown uncertainty for the men's team here in October. Ethan Bock, Mike Asti. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and also find us everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, and all of our coverage of the women, the men, and everything else. Mountaineer Athletics at WV Sports Now.